Marine Scout Sniper. He was fighting in Ukraine on the front line under the intelligence service of Ukraine. Today, fight for Ukraine on the Capitol Hill and leaves his fingerprints on the $60 billion aid package. Matthew Sampson is back to Ukraine and our studio on UATV English.
Hello, sir. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again. Well, last time it was in February. You told me that you're leaving for America for the following day, like for 2 or 3 months.
Yes, sir.
Half a year you spent there.
I did, yes, much longer than expected, yeah.
Why?
Yeah, there's a lot more going on than originally anticipated. I was able to do some advocacy for Ukraine, and that was my primary reason for going home. And I also had some family stuff that came up while I was there as well.
What family stuff? Can you tell us about, if I may ask this?
Unfortunately, part of the reason I was going home around that time is, I found out that my mother was doing much, much worse. She had been battling cancer for quite some time.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. My condolences.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So shortly after I got back to the States, and once I had my first opportunity to get back to California, which is where she was in the hospital, I went out there to visit her and spend a little bit of time with her. Unfortunately, she died about 40 minutes before I got to the hospital, so I wasn't able to say anything to her while she was alive. So that means that it was about 3 years ago the last time I actually saw her. So, that was just one of the, what just happened with me spending so much time in Ukraine.
Really sorry to hear that. Well, what about your father? Is he okay?
My father, actually, he died the day I went to Afghanistan back in 2009. So I did have a good relationship before he passed, but he also died of cancer. So my mother was the only parent that I had left at the time. Right before
really
she passed.
embarrassed. I'm really sorry. Really sorry. I didn't know that. So,
but it's just a small sacrifice that I've done that so many Ukrainians have done so much more and sacrificed so much more with all this stuff that's going on with this war with Russia of losing sons and daughters and fathers and daughters, and it's tragic to see how so many people are living with stuff like this on a regular basis. For me, it was something that was semi-expected with both parents having cancer and it being stage 4 cancer by the time that I was able to interact with them or plan to interact with them. But here with the war here, that's generally not the case. It's not a whole lot of family members dying due to diseases and cancer. It's bullets, bombs, explosions, and stuff like that from a very ruthless aggressor.
Your bracelets, I've noticed them. So your
Yes.
brothers in arms.
Yes, these were a couple of guys that I had the honor of working with that were killed out in Bakhmut back in 2023. And I got to talk about them a little bit at the U.S. Capitol. One was a U.S. Navy SEAL, Dan Swift, and another one, Greg, was a Ukrainian Canadian. Both of them, I got to work with them for quite a while, and both very honorable men. And we miss them quite a bit. They're good guys.
Well, thank them for their service. That's all I can say. What else have you been doing in the United States?
Most of my time, I would say about 80% of it was spent doing advocacy for Ukraine. I drove over 20,000 miles, which is about 32,000 kilometers while I was there over the 6 months. And it was, going everywhere I could to talk to the American people, both politicians and just your average citizens, about the reality of what's going on here in Ukraine, along with trying to do some fundraising. Unfortunately, the fundraising doesn't go so well. One of the larger fundraisers that I did was outside of Reno, Nevada. It was promoted before I got there, and I walked out of there ultimately with $70 and a free Coke, which didn't even cover the fuel to drive 1,600 miles to go to this fundraiser. So that was supposed to be kind of helping me out so that way I could travel around the country and share my story and my experiences with American people, because most really have no idea what's going on.
Really?
So, some were actually surprised that the war is still happening because they
were thinking that it's over and Ukraine won or lost or whatever?
Just that it's over, because they haven't seen it on the news very much. And so that was something that I really enjoyed, being able to kind of share that experience of just telling them what's going on. And then some believe some very incorrect stuff about what's going on here, including, one of the examples would be a couple people said, well, isn't Zelensky taking all that cash and putting it in his pocket? Which is something that, I was able to explain to them that, these aid packages coming from at least the United States, it's very rare that there's any amount of cash coming to Ukraine from those aid packages. It's generally, if it's a $60 billion aid package, it's generally 60 billion worth of equipment. And sometimes there's a little bit of cash, and that cash is monitored extremely heavily, every single dollar, and it has to be spent on whatever the US government says that it has to be spent on.
Which is located mostly in the United States.
Correct. Absolutely. So that was stuff that I was able to share with some of the American people about the reality of what is and is not going on here, because they're also being fed a lot of negative and incorrect propaganda. Unfortunately, that's one of the few things that Russia does do very well, is sharing disinformation and
And
propaganda.
en masse, yeah, a lot of it.
Yes.
But what an average person, an average American, what can a person do if she wants to help Ukraine? If they
There's
want to
ac-
help Ukraine?
there's actually a lot that they could do. So if they want to get really directly involved, then they could, find someone like myself or others and, provide donations that help us do what we're doing. Another thing that they could do is they could reach out to their representatives in Congress. And they could do that daily or weekly or monthly and call them and send them letters about how they want, their congressman or woman to support aid to Ukraine. So that way we can, try to keep America out of a world war, keep Europe
Right.
out of a world war, and, push the aggressor back, into their own borders.
It's really strange for anyone who was born in the Soviet Union and then suddenly experienced all the European freedoms, like me, myself, to hear that the systems work. That's how the democracy works. Like someone can pick up the phone and call a congressman or a congresswoman and just talk to them. It's
Yes.
really, it's encouraging. So, but how can an average person find you on the internet? What do you need to do?
One of the best ways to find me is just Googling Matthew Sampson, Ukraine.
I believe
You
so.
Google that, and I'd say about 95% of what comes up on Google is on me. My website's on there, my fundraisers are on there, some other interviews I've done are all on there. So just Matthew Sampson, Ukraine is one of the best ways to find me. And I have contact information on my website, on my fundraisers. So if people want to talk to me directly, then my contact information is on there.
So I saw that you met a group of very passionate volunteers in Poland last week. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, that was actually something that was really cool. It just happened, being in the right place at the right time. And, this group led me down into what was basically like a storage basement area of a building.
Right.
And they just make camouflage netting for the Ukrainian front lines. They get
Is that
into
volunteering or?
all 100% volunteer.
Right.
So, there's a lot of very passionate people, primarily Ukrainians, but others as well that are there, in Poland, doing this stuff. And this isn't the only group that's there, but it's the group that I got to interact with. And so they invited me to be a special guest for them for a day. So I spent some time with them to kind of see their operation and see that they get to contact frontline units. The units tell them what they need for these camouflage nettings and patterns and sizes, and then they create these nettings. And there's a lot that goes into that because it depends on what the weather is. It just depends on the terrain and whether or not they're going to be doing light colors, summer colors, stuff like that. And it was something that was truly an honor to see how people not in Ukraine are doing so much to help out the war effort. And it was something that I was actually able to share with them that I have, on my phone. I got a photo of a couple kids doing the exact same thing that I received from a Ukrainian at the beginning of this war. I think one was 7, one was 11. So that goes to show that it doesn't matter what your age is or where you are physically. There's absolutely something that you can do for the war effort. Now, if you're back in the States, donations or just calling up your congressman, as we already talked about, or if you're in other places and you're able to do physical labor like putting together camouflage nets. And for this group, they average, it depends on, what's going on with supplies and stuff like that, but they average
sure.
at least, good like
And
three
any
nets a
effort
day.
counts.
Yeah. So 3 nets a day, that adds up really quick. And that's something that can be extremely important to have good camouflage out in the trenches and out at the front lines.
Going back to this front lines, I was waiting to ask this question, craving to know the answer.
Yes.
Kursk. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone is discussing. So this is a rare chance to ask someone who was actually fighting in the trench and knows how to win and how to survive, just by the way, so to win. What do you personally think of this Kursk incursion of armed forces of Ukraine?
So I would love to have the opportunity to go there and be able to kind of see what's all going on there. But
Surprised.
I would say, just for a personal opinion, that it's outstanding to see that it's been almost 100 years since Russia has been, invaded by some kind of military force.
Invaded back.
Yes, yes. And so I think that goes to show the American people and the world the amount of organization that Ukraine and the Ukrainian military is able to have, doing so much stuff on their own, as long as they're given the weapons and ammunition to do what they're trying to do. And that's something also that I was able to inform a lot of the American people, that, some of them were under the impression that, it's not very organized over here as far as the military and the government. And I was able to share with them, some of the stuff that I've seen myself, especially some of the massive improvements that I've seen out at the front lines. The Ukrainian military learning from Western and NATO partners of how to conduct, more successful combat operations.
Right.
And the operation in Kursk, I think, is an excellent example of what they're able to accomplish when, they work together. And that's something that, speaks, I think, very loudly to the American people and the rest of the world.
Really encouraging to hear from you, especially, specifically from you. But so what's next? Moscow? Or is Kursk just, keep on smiling, I love that. But if not Moscow, so maybe going serious, more serious, is Kursk some sort of a collateral in possible future negotiations with Moscow? Do you think that might be the reason?
I'm taking just an educated guess on that.
Right.
That's probably what that is. I would have to assume, because getting too close to Moscow, it gets us very close to the possibility of nuclear weapons, and that's bad for business for the entire world. And that's something that we're trying to avoid. And that's something that, personally, I don't envy the world leaders that are making these high-level decisions of stuff like this, that include playing geopolitical chess with nuclear weapons on the chessboard. That's something that, every decision matters substantially. And, we definitely don't want to cross that line to where nukes start, flying through the air.
I have someone who I called my friend. I hope to call him my friend, Glenn Grant. He's a lieutenant colonel of British Army. And I'm asking him, Putin is waving his nuclear gavel all over time. And red lines, where are these red lines? All crossed.
Yes.
Already. So what happens if Putin goes nuclear? And Mr. Grant said, well, I'd love for him to see him doing that, because that will be probably the end of all. Russia?
Good.
And I don't think that no matter how I think he's bad. But I don't think he's really that crazy.
Let's hope not.
Right. Okay. So if Matthew Sampson would be the general commander of Ukraine armed forces, what would you do, General Sampson?
I think that I would focus my efforts primarily on educating those that are helping us, because I think that's our biggest problem. And that's what I saw a lot in America, is so many are not actively supporting Ukraine because they just don't have the proper and correct education about what's going on. And that's where we're fighting this disinformation of Russia. Because I believe, we've seen in Kursk that the Ukrainian military can do some pretty fantastic stuff. They just need the weapons and ammo to do it, and also the permission to do it from, the people that, donated the weapons and the ammo.
Right.
And if, they're not allowed to use the weapons and ammo the way that they want to, then it's, they're obligated not to. Otherwise, they're just not going to get more stuff, handed to them. So that's something that I believe for myself, if I was in that position, based on what I know today, would be to just educate, the partners about what's going on and really fight that. With that, I actually learned something very interesting. I had a very interesting meeting while I was in D.C. A few months back about the different amounts of money that is being spent on propaganda. That, it's on good information that Russia is spending $2.5 billion on their propaganda, reaching outwards. The United States is spending less than $800 million doing the same thing. So that means that Russia is outspending the United States on something by 4 times.
Both dollars, it's Russia is anyway spending dollars, not rubles. Nobody cares about
Sure.
rubles. So maybe we can do something about this. Like, you know,
And that's something that, that is, I got to see a lot of the evidence of that and helped me understand a lot of the weird stuff that I hear from some of my American counterparts back in the United States as to why they say stuff like, isn't Zelensky just putting all this money in his pocket and going on vacations and stuff that there is no evidence to support whatsoever. But if someone is spending $2.5 billion on advertisement, then their message is going to get across. So someone like the general, if I was in that position, I'd be doing everything I can to combat that because that's where we can get more support and more funds to do everything that Ukraine needs to do to win back their territory.
so this is another front line. We have to win it.
Absolutely.
I wish you all the luck in the world. Let me know what your next step in Ukraine, and I'll do my best to help you. I hope to see you in this very studio. Thank you so very much for your service and for you advocating Ukraine right here in the trenches on the front line and in Washington, D.C. and wherever you are.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Matthew Sampson, the man who fighting in actual trenches for Ukraine and advocating Ukraine in America. Thank you, Matthew Sampson, and you please stay safe and tune for more very soon. Well, that was it, folks. Thanks for watching me, Henry Keane, and UATV English. We did our best to get you somehow truth in at least somewhat easy terms. Please like, subscribe, and comment. In return, your voice matters indeed, as it helps Ukrainian voice to be heard worldwide. Stay safe and tune for more next week. Goodbye.